Thank you, folks, for joining us. For those who don't know, we have Saundari Mukherjee in the house, and we know her as. I find it difficult to say Saundari because Sound, as we all know her, is an alumnus of the same college that all the co-founders of Streamalive went to, and so we go back a long way. Though we hadn't met because we were a couple of years apart in college. And finally ended up correcting that sometime last year. I'm glad for it because sometimes you get this feeling you've known someone all your life. And that's exactly what we felt when we first met. Also, a lot of connective tissue in terms of things that Sound believes in and works on, and what we do here at Streamalive. Starting with the fact that all of us do all kinds of roles. So when I found that she calls herself the chief everything officer, that kind of struck a chord because that's very, very resonant. Sound is also a coach at various levels. She's a storytelling coach, as we're going to find out today. She's also a coach for TEDx. And she's also a faculty and a mentor at various places. And basically, at its core, a visual thinker, so to speak. She's got a big, hairy, audacious goal, which is to help people to, leaders and teams to drive business outcomes. And she just believes that you need, brands to be a little more human, and that storytelling is the key unlock for that. She is also into a bunch of activities, including working on a pottery wheel. So at some point in the future, we should have a pottery workshop live. I don't know how we'll do it, but I'm sure Sound will figure out a way for us to do it, and I look forward to that. Sound, take it away off. Over to you, and look forward to. I had a preview of this, and I think everyone is in for a fascinating ride today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Lux, Tina, and the Streamalive team, Duncan and Peter, uh, one for the warm intro. And I'm happy to be here, not just as a storyteller, but also as a joyous user of Streamalive. And as Lux mentioned, we're going to talk today about fact sell, tell, and story sell. But you have an advantage. You know who was signed in. You know what I do. So I'd love to hear from you about what you do. So if you can just type in the chat, one word, what's your area of work? And thanks, Lux, for helping me set up some of the tools that I can use in Streamalive. I always enjoy the way things come up in marketing.
So, for those who joined us late, one or two words to explain what you do, a maximum of two words.
Health,
Oops,
public health, I guess.
Praveen, that works too.
Semi-retired. Catching up on reading. I love that. That's a space I would love to be in. Finance. Part of some book clubs, and I'm always fascinated to see that some people have like amazing amount of reading that they do, and like, you wonder how do they have 48 hours in a day. Growth AI has to be at least one AI has to come out, right? Today's time, otherwise it doesn't seem, and in Stream Alive, I guess it has to be there. As you all keep typing, that's a pretty good range of things. So I'm sure all of you use stories in multiple different ways. As we mentioned in the antenna operations, yes. In a world which is overloaded by data and pitches, the ability to craft and tell compelling stories is what really sets entrepreneurs, leaders, everybody apart. And in a leadership context, I feel the story has to do one more thing, which is to help your audience get to a shared understanding or move them towards action. So today, broadly, we will look at some of these aspects, and we had put it out in the blurb. I hope to talk about most of it, but definitely about a little bit on the signs of why stories sell, some of the key elements of what makes a business story, some examples as we go along the way, and some practical tips to round off. But as I do this, I'm always thinking about an album called 4 Minutes. It was a collaboration with Madonna and Justin Timberlake. And when they were doing this collaboration, when they were recording this song, Madonna was like unhappy with the lyrics. She said it's not power packed enough, it's not punchy enough. Let's change this, let's do that. And at one point of time, Justin just put his hand up and said, Madonna, we can't change the world in 4 minutes. So while storytelling in business is not something that we will cover in 4 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, it's definitely a learnable skill and something very valuable for all of us to use both in our personal and professional lives. So I think it's great that we are doing this step together, co-creating this session. So thank you all for being here for that. With that, I always wonder when we say, I get semantic about saying storytelling, and no, it's not the mythology related storytelling and all of that. And I do make a distinction about the fact that we're talking about business storytelling. So I do want to know, what is the word that comes to your mind when you hear business storytelling? So if you can just type in the chat. One word, two words, I think it should be okay. We have the tiles. I love the tiles. The Tetris. Formal structures, anecdotal, effective communication, relatability, social media for sure. I think for a lot of the time in today's times, business storytelling is about what you see in the social media rather than just anything else that you might have in mind. Ability to form an emotional connection, all of it for sure. Definitely the focus is on effective communication. And I love the fact that there is effective before the communication. It's not just communication, but it's our ability to connect with our audience, create that stickiness, memorability, and relatability. Absolutely. All of those. For me, it also triggers a thought around setting up people for success. I know it's not one word, but many words. And that's because about 8, 10 years ago, I had a meeting with the APEC head of learning for global markets and risk at a retail bank here, a British bank here in Hong Kong. I was connected to him by a very good friend. So I was keen to make a good impression. Now, in my days in working with ANZ, I had met a lot of bankers, but I didn't want to take it for granted. I wanted to go for the meeting prepared. So I asked my friend for time to understand that side of business better. I'd worked in retail, not so much in global markets, though I had a sense of what the business was. It was really tough to find a convenient time because my friend was working in treasury and his hours were atrocious. But he said, okay, I can give you 15 minutes on a Monday. And come that Monday, what is 15 minutes actually morphed into an hour. And he generously shared about situations where the emotional connect between the stakeholders would make a difference in the conversation, even for something which is risk and treasury. So come the day of the meeting, I still have some butterflies in my stomach. And as I enter the meeting room and we do our visiting card exchanges, which is like with two hands and with a lot of ceremony here in Hong Kong, the first question that was thrown to me was, tell me, how is storytelling even relevant for our business? Because of that conversation with my friend, I was able to narrate some examples, some anecdotal evidence of how a story could be used. And after that, the conversation just flowed. And my friend's insight really set me up for success. And that's what I would like to do today for us. I'd like to set you up for success in terms of feeling confident about using storytelling skills in your work, in your day-to-day business. So why stories, right? It is something that we've done from our caveman days. We've seen that stories are there on the walls, it's there everywhere. We've seen this. And cultural anthropologist Mary Catherine Bateson, she says as human species think in metaphors and learn through stories. And I always think about Steve Jobs' reference when he was talking about the computer. He said the computer is the bicycle of the mind. So that is something that we totally connect with. Yeah, okay. For now we take computers for granted, but at that time when computers were not popular, that was a new thing. That was a good shortcut for us to think about. And we get that. We get that connection. We get that metaphorical reference. But I'm going to invoke somebody that you can't argue with, and that is Tyrion from the Game of Thrones, who talks about what unites people, and it's stories. Nothing like a good story which will really get us going. But I think today's time, the more relevant thing is about why do stories matter now? And I think there are a few reasons, and I'm sure there can be many. But one of the things that I want to talk about is what I call the ACR challenge. No, it's not a tear on your meniscus or anything like that. It's about just what is the attention that we have today. We are in a day of information overload, there's content richness. We are all distracted people. I mean, if you weren't in this, and I'm assuming you're now listening with your full concentration, you'd probably be browsing on your phone. You'd be, if you had like half an hour, you could look at a Amazon Prime or any other Netflix show, anything else, right? And I think that's where our attention is so divided. And to cut through that noise, a story does a great job of it. The second thing that really comes in the way is comprehension. Today, not just today, we always had jargons which were related to different industries. And I think as the days go by with all the three-letter words and the four-letter words which are coming out, it is getting complex, the language. And I remember during COVID, there was a new thing, that new post that came up, which was called the CZO. What could a CZO be? I mean, maybe somebody can just mute and tell me, just like how we have the CEO and the CTO and the CHRO. What could a CZO be? Any guesses?
Chief Zoom Officer.
Yes, Chief Zoom Officer. So new designations, new things, which just keep coming up, right? And this makes it's all okay if you're in one industry. And that's the challenge today we have. Okay, tech folks get it. If you're all in tech and you're all talking the same language, great. But it's not enough if you're just a tech folk sitting and doing this. You need to talk to a marketing person. You need to talk to a finance person. You need to talk to an investor. So you need to talk in a language which is common and which is understandable by everybody. So comprehension also becomes a challenge in today's world. And the third part, which is the R, which is about retention. How many of us would have gone to these town halls when we were working in corporates, when the CEO comes and gives this big pitch, and then we have to take that pitch and talk to our teams and say why they need to be aligned to that pitch? For that to happen, we need to be able to remember and retell what was said. And I remember one of the American banks here, a friend of mine who was working there, he went to a town hall and I happened to be catching up for drinks with him after the town hall. And I asked him, oh, come on, your CEO was here. Tell me what's happened. Give me some inside information and all that. And he said, no, nothing. Just a lot of numbers. I said, there must be something. Tell me, what's the new direction? What is he talking about? Yeah, some numbers. That really makes me think, if this is the impression that the CEO is leaving, that is just a bunch of numbers that he is left with, and they can't share a coherent story or what the direction of the organization is, a lot of money is spent in building these decks. So you do wonder about where is the impact of these decks if that's all people are remembering about. There's a third thing about retention is also about how our brains are wired. Yuri Hassan is a professor and is a neuroscientist. And he says that imagine if there could be a technology where our ideas, my ideas could get into your brains. And I'd love for this to happen with my clients, but doesn't always happen. It'd be amazing, right? If you could possess a device, but we already have it. It's the human communication system and it's the effective storytelling. And when our brains connect that way, and this is what stories are supposed to do, when our brains, when you hear a story, the speaker's brains and the listener's brains have something called as neurocoupling. When I'm starting to say a narration, when I say, last week when I was walking on the road, and you almost start filling up the blanks as I'm speaking. So the listener's brain really gets attuned to the speaker's brain, and there is a connection. And that connection is what is called neural coupling. And that happens when they did a lot of MRI scans and research around it. And this happens when people are sharing stories. And over the last few years, this is the work I've been doing with organizations when I've been crafting their strategies, helping them communicate. And working with the leaders, this is something that I realized that the most effective leaders share examples to make a point. How do all these world leaders build trust? They don't just present data, they tell great stories. So let me share one. In November 2015, in a panel discussion, which was part of an APEC summit on climate change in Manila in Philippines, Obama asked Jack Ma, why is there a need for climate change? And Jack Ma said, it's not just my passion, but it's my concern. When I was 12 years old, I went to swim in a lake in my hometown and I almost died. I almost drowned in that lake. But 5 years ago, when I went to that lake was totally dry. My second concern, he said, was that a young colleague has died of cancer. 20 years ago, very few people had heard of the word cancer. If it works so hard, if you're working so hard with the medicines, with the technology, without a healthy environment, we really can't, doesn't matter how many resources we put in, it won't help. So we need to invest in climate change. So in such a big forum, when he's asked about climate change, which can be a concept, a debatable concept, but also a nebulous concept in some ways for some people, he uses a personal example to drive home a message. I'm sure if I asked you, you could visualize that lake. You can visualize that young boy when he went in where he could have drowned in that lake. And you can also visualize the dry lake later when he saw. So those visual moments really help us connect to what his passion points are. I'm conscious that I'm talking, but I would like to hear from you as well. Who do you think is the best business storyteller that you've ever heard? If you can just type in the chat. I think by now we know the drill. It's typing in the chat or unmuting yourself. Steve Jobs, for sure. That's by default the first name that comes up in most of these conversations. Satya Nadella and the Current Times. Thank you, Lux, for making that bracket announcement about Elon Musk. That was very important. Just the stories bit. Otherwise, I was going to disown, defriend you there. Lux, oh, Donkin, very nice. Oh, there's a Lux fan club there.
I've been sending memos to a lot of people on the side, yeah.
His economics sometimes come across as stories, yes. I mean, sometimes we have people concocting stories. Any other names? Well, as you're typing, actually, all of us are storytellers. Yeah, we are not talking about AI and hallucinations now, Tina. Yeah, Indra Nui, absolutely, Dabalina. Thanks for sharing that. All of us are storytellers. When we work, when we talk to people, we always start sharing our experiences. You know what happened last night? You know, when I went to Ladakh, this is what happened. When we were in the Bay Area, I heard this. We are sharing examples and we are sharing our experiences. But somehow, sometimes at work, we tend to focus only on data. And then we come across as somebody who's going to put some people in perpetual coma or trauma about how we communicate and what we speak about. And I think that is where some of the biggest challenges on storytelling is on how do you get people to embrace it, evangelize it, and take it forward. And we know that we make sense of the world through stories, but I hear some of the problem statements from my clients, which is to say that our leaders are not inspiring. Staff engagement survey shows that leadership communication is at an absolute rock bottom. Our values are just hung on the wall. It's like a talisman, as if it's to ward off some spirits, but we don't know how to bring them to life. Our salespeople have great technical knowledge, but they're talking like they're talking out of brochures. And there is over reliance on PowerPoint, and which is generally seems to be a common theme as well. And when I was doing this, that's when I stumbled upon, I say it was not a eureka moment or anything like that, but I saw that people were using stories and they were impactful. I started using stories myself and I saw that the connections were building. And then I started evangelizing it. And it's not about storytelling. Leaders and salespeople or entrepreneurs, nobody wants to be a storyteller. Maybe Lux at the back of the mind because he writes books, he wants to be. But what you want to be is you want to be effective. And one of the first things that I tell people is that we are not interested in storytelling per se. It seems counterintuitive, but we are actually interested in achieving fantastic business results using a simple tool for communication, which is storytelling. So it's just adding that tool to our repertoire. Nothing big, not the Bollywood, Hollywood kind of storytelling, but small anecdotes, small examples in our day-to-day, which really helps build the connections. So I want to pause for a minute now and ask you, what are some of your biggest pain points or challenges when it comes to storytelling? Either by telling it yourself or when you listen to stories, whichever way you want to read the question. So if you can just type in the chat. I tend to talk a little bit fast. So tell me anytime if you want me to, slow down my pace a little bit. Struggle to be precise. Yes. Connecting a personal story to business. Finding the appropriate stories to tell. And that's a great point because we know a lot of stories, what is relevant, and making it fit for the audience. Absolutely, Debalina. Very, very important. Struggle to articulate. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about this, Durgesh, later. If you can unmute and share. When you say struggle to articulate, you have a vision, you have a story. How do I put it in words? In case you're not able to unmute and share, maybe you can type in the chat as well. Confused. Okay. Like what point to pick up, which is the story to share. Not going, eesh, I should have mentioned that story. What I can share and what not. Understand. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of a challenge that most people face, especially when they are sharing personal stories. How personal is too personal can be a thing. So you do want to be that vulnerable, authentic leader who's sharing a personal story, but sometimes that doesn't feel comfortable. And I will come to it. I'll talk a little bit about it as we go along. Thanks for sharing that, Durgesh. Really, I mean, this is a common challenge. Amount of detail to provide without rambling. How much is too much? Yeah, right.
Yeah, and Saul, if you don't mind helping us stress test something, I would love to summarize everyone's points. If you just go to the right of the arrow where you are right now, your mouse.
Okay.
If you just move your mouse to the bottom of the screen, yeah, and there you should, to the right of the arrows, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
just click on that light bulb, which is a summary. It kind of summarizes
Great.
everyone's responses. I'm just curious to see what comes up because we got some
Great.
amazing responses there.
No, thanks for telling about these features as well as we go along because sometimes maybe we are using, I feel that it's like, oh, the first one, oh, it does a summary, AI summary, mastering timing, relevance and clarity, memory and recall. audience connection, tailoring to the audience, content selection, what is the appropriate one, effective. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty cool actually. If I may say
Yeah.
so.
Oh, that's great. That's good to know. Can you also see it as a list, like the list version, or you're
Yeah,
on mute? That's
you can see the list of responses.
at the back. Yeah.
Yeah, if you do a pause,
Yep. So if we
Ah, okay.
just do pause. If you come
Oh,
down,
when I do a pause. Okay.
yeah.
Ah, okay. Great. Fantastic.
and you could scroll up and down if you wanted to go through all the
Yeah,
responses.
that's fantastic. Great.
Always happy to be tech support.
No, I think it's great to learn the features as well because I think it's like the iPhone. There are so many buttons there. I'm sure I'm using it at 1% capacity. Literally, when I got a new phone, I thought, okay, they had a offer to run us through all the features. And I said, I'll set up a call with the Genius Bar and just ask. You may not use all of it, but it's good to know, right? So thanks for doing that for me. You are the Genius Bar there. I think all of these are really, really relevant points. And this is something that all of us struggle with. And this is the reason why having some structures, having some frameworks around storytelling could be really useful. Um, there are many areas in which storytelling can be used to great effect. We won't have time to go through all of it, but I just want to talk about especially one area. One of the places where storytelling comes in really handy is on strategy communication or when you're communicating a change. And I will come back to all the points that you've raised when we are doing the wrap up and tips. And when we talk about stories, I will come back to it. I've got it noted. So don't worry, we'll come back. On strategy, basically, one of the things that we know is that it is top level picture. It's a 30,000 feet view, right? And we need it to be relatable to where we are. Like, say, for instance, if we say that we want to be the most digitally transformed company, oh, great. What does that even mean to me at my workplace? And we need that conversion happening from what is at 30,000 feet level. How does it affect my VPs, my team? How does it affect the one down? How does it affect the people in the factory? Really being able to break down strategy in a way, what's in it for me? How is my life? My life was like this before. How is it going to change? And that bridge is really done very nicely by using some of the story structures. But unfortunately, a lot of the times we come into what I call communication pitfalls when we're doing it, and we end up using words like these, literally brain freeze kind of words: deep collaboration, optimizing operating practices, enhance culture of innovation, and things like that. Totally right. I'm sure if I asked you, have you heard any of these words or have you used it? We would have all used it. We would have all definitely heard it. Absolutely brain freeze, mind numbing kind of words. But I want to highlight one particular communication challenge that we will have when we use languages like this. And I just want to take you through a small experiment. So just bear with me. And this is really important because I remember John Flint, who used to be the past CEO of HSBC here in Hong Kong. He said that through the course of his 30-year career, he must have made 1 million PowerPoint slides, and nobody remembers a word of what he wrote in that. But along the way, he shared great stories of his successes, his failures, what worked. And he says today that is what people are still in touch with me for. So we really need to find a way to cut through all those communication pitfalls. And let's just look at one of it. I'm going to show you a slide with a lot of words. So bear with me. It's the awfulest slide that you'll ever see. But I want you to take a minute to read it and then tell me what is the process that is being described there. So just play along with me. I'll read it along with you and then I will pause and stop and ask. I think most of us would have finished reading this by now. Yeah? Okay. So if you can just type on the chat, what is the process that is being described here? What do you think is the process? I know I test tried it on Lux. So Lux, you are exempted from answering unless you want to like generally throw in some spin there. Sandy beach making. Some examples? Praveen, examples of what? Dancing outside.
I'm trying to tell something, so I'm trying to illustrate, use an example. Uh, like when of course, I would give the wrong example when it comes to marathon running. I would say it is good to both run and walk instead of just run and walk. So that's why I correlated with the run and the walk statement there, that I would use that as an example.
Right,
Uh,
right,
or
right.
why is a newspaper better than magazine? Because it has more relevant content. Magazine may be figment of imagination, though of course newspaper today is also a figment of imagination.
No, great connection. Great. I like that. I like that. Analogies and comparisons, Develina. Reach for the stars. Some motivational speech, maybe. Reach for the stars, do well. Some, as we say in India, gyan, some knowledge based book writing process for the stuff. I mean, I always will hope and pray that nobody gets the answer, but that apart, there's always somebody who will sometimes. Today we have with the quorum that is, I think I'm safe. What if I, instead of just letting you read it, what if I showed you this picture and then I ask you to read the same process? What do you think the process actually talked about?
Kite making.
And making newspapers better than a magazine. The kites come out really well in that. Seashore, lot of breeze. It's better to run than to walk. All of it, right? Rain, however, soaks in fast. Birds seldom get close. All of that. Rock serves as an anchor, everything. But this is how we end up communicating messages. We give a bunch of process notes, we give a bunch of data points or process notes, and we tell people understand and go ahead and do what you have to do. And most of the times people understand it in their own way. It could be about dancing, it could be about marathon. So based on what you understand, you take that and go ahead and implement it in the organization. But as a leader, what you've forgotten to do is to give the gist before the details, which is, where is the point? Why do I have to wait for the 27th slide for the point to come out? Why don't I have the point right up on top? And I think not giving the gist before the details is a problem of communication. And this is one of the biggest reasons why our big picture communication and strategy communication fails. And the way to do it is to do it actually in a structured fashion, using a story template, which we won't have the time to talk about that template today, but there are templates in which you can use to how can you influence action? How can you communicate your sales strategy? How can you communicate success stories better? How can you talk about clarifying a change? All of that, there can be specific structures which are developed, which are organic, which are already there in different forums, which we can put together and create a structure so it makes the communication really precise and powerful. I want to talk about a couple of myths about stories. One is that this is a vendetta against PowerPoint slides. No, it's not. We are using PowerPoint slides, but it is a request to actually create a narrative around the data. In earlier times, when we talked about data storytelling, for instance, we talked about visualization mostly. And the visualization tools have really come a long way. Or we focused on just the analytics part of it. But today, when we look at data storytelling, it is the analytics, it is the visualization, it is how you apply the business acumen to it, and what is then the overarching narrative that you're creating around it. So I really like what Brené Brown talks about, saying that stories are actually data with a soul. We are trying to get the soul into the data so that it is not just facts and figures which take us to the head. It is stories and emotions, so it takes us to the heart. So instead of just reaching a conclusion, you're moving people to action, and which is the space that you want to see people in. You don't want them to just form conclusions and leave it at that. You want them to take it to the next step. So I really want to focus on looking at, of course, we need data. No business runs without data. We do need the data. But we have these amazing AI tools which can cull out through a lot of data and give us those examples and stories, the use cases in this case, our client use cases. It could be business cases, it could be use cases that we're using, which we then can go and present. And the early adopters of some of this can actually also drive action for the others. I was listening to this podcast today, which is called AI plus HI, uh, artificial intelligence, and it's a Shrum podcast. And in that, there are some examples about how Walmart is using AI. And the whole conversation was not about just how they're using AI in HR, but it was about how they were presenting the examples of where it has worked to make a point for adoption. So you need both of that. You need everything working in sync for you to be talking about adoption and change. And that's why I think it's really important to look at storytelling on a more broader spectrum rather than saying, oh, this is story and this is data. They actually blend in and work well together. I also think that stories are a real pull strategy. In our initial conversation, when I was talking about the British bank where my friend set me up for success, when you heard that anecdote, what did it make you think of me as a person? So I actually have a poll question for that. And it is, I know it's getting recorded, but it's okay. It's a closed room. Feel free to tell what you think of me. When you heard about me talking to my friend and then using that his examples to set me up for success, what did it make you think about me as a person? Someone who did a homework at school, diligent, prepared. I'll wait for a couple more. Sometimes this feels good. I can just stay in this zone, but you know, seek support openly. Thanks, Evelina. Astute. Thank you. Yeah, you can keep it coming. This can be good fun for me, but in the interest of time, what if instead of sharing that anecdote, I said, hi, I'm Soundari. I'm someone who does my homework. I'm very diligent. I'm prepared. I seek support. I'm astute. What if I had said something like that about myself? How would you think of me as a person? And you can just add to the same chat on that. Very dry and formal. Yeah, Debolina. Boring. Raga, yeah. And I was waiting for that. I was just like bracing myself for that. Definitely, right? But this is how we introduce ourselves. We give a list of our credentials instead of letting our character speak for ourselves, for itself. When you share an anecdote, when you meet somebody, be it an entrepreneur, be it at a workplace, be it as a leader, you get a chance to give a glimpse about who you are as a person. And in that sliding door movement, trust and connection is built. And the audience is intelligent. You don't have to go and say all of these words. The audience will figure it out for themselves. So whenever you're talking, and I think this is like literally storytelling 101, character trumps credentials. So don't ever introduce yourself in a list of credentials. Think about an incident. Think about what is a value, what is a character that you want to show about yourself, and think about an example from your experience which will showcase that and share that. And when you do that, people will form a right opinion about you. It may be a whole lot of other things. So somebody might say astute, somebody might say diligent and all of that. But they will get a sense of who you are as a person. And we say, right, people buy you before buying you an idea. So using stories as a way to build your personal brand is a great way of building just the connection, anchoring what is your unique position, and being able to explain all these dimensions without using those words. So we also say that the shortest distance between two people is a story. And I remember Viniche is in properties here in Swire Properties in Hong Kong. And we met at a Toastmasters event. And she said that though she is from Hong Kong originally, she had spent a lot of time studying abroad. And when she came back in, she found it very difficult to integrate with the team. The local team had a habit that in the morning, because it was a properties team, they would do a survey of the property early in the morning. So they would go from floor to floor, check if everything's okay, check if the bathrooms are okay. And they had that drill every morning. So she wanted to be part of that drill, and she would go there and try to, literally almost weasel her way in and talk to them. And they were a close group. They weren't letting her in. So slowly over a period of time, she started asking them about, oh, so how was your weekend? Blank stare, no response. Then she said, oh, last weekend I went with my kids. I went to a park here. We went to the strawberry farm here. She slowly started sharing some things about herself. It was something as simple as what you did in the weekend. And over a period of time, that became the icebreakers for her to integrate into the team and start working with them well. So stories really are the shortest distance between two people. They build connections in a way that no data point can ever do. I'm just conscious of time that we have. So I wanted to share a video. It's a really short video. Let me do that. I just need to figure out a way to toggle the screen. Give me a second. Okay. Can you see the screen now? Can you see?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now I shall daintily press. Is it all good?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah. Never easy to speak when you just lost the final of a Grand Slam, but I'm going to try to do my best, better than on the court, hopefully. First of all, congrats to Novak and your team. I mean, 9 Grand Slams in Australia, 18 total is amazing, and probably it's not your last one, so I mean, I have no words to say. Just to tell you a small story, guys. First, I practiced with Novak when I was, I think, like 500 in the world or 600 in the world in Monaco, and so he was already number one, just won Wimbledon. And I thought, okay, he's not going to speak to me or something, because the guy was a god for me. And I came there, and because I was shy, so I didn't speak. So he was asking me questions, talking to me like a friend. I was really surprised, and it never changed since I was 600 in the world or 4 in the world. You're a great sport, great person, so congrats to you.
Yeah, so I'm just going to pause this here, because the whole video, we don't need to see the whole video. Not because I'm not a fan of Djokovic, but so I want to ask you, let me toggle back to the other screen, and I can. Okay, are we back onto Streamalive?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seeing the screen.
Okay. So what I want to ask you is, based on what you heard, what do you think about Djokovic or Medvedev as a person? It could be 2 questions, actually, but Happy with one question there. Both generous people, grounded, generous sport, Djokovic. I'm not a fan of either player. One second, one lost his mind. I agree, Praveen. Especially after the meltdown against Cam Norrie. I'm totally with you. But just on the basis of the what was shared, let's look at it from an anecdotal perspective. Yeah, totally. I mean, I think what it does is in just sub 1 minute, 4 seconds, Medvedev was gracious in his defeat, humble and helpful to that extent. Yeah, in this context. Um, but two things. One, in such a high pressure situation, you've lost a match. It's a Grand Slam final. You want to go in a corner and just sit and cry, but you need to make a speech. So in that moment, for you to think of somebody else, it's great PR, of course, but it's also some memory that's been triggered, a past memory of an incident that's been triggered, and he shares a story. He talks about a time that it happened. And what it does in that 1 minute is it gives us a rich glimpse about both of them as people. Even if we didn't follow tennis, if we follow tennis, we have a problem. But if we did follow tennis and we just looked at it from that perspective, we get some sense of who they are as people. And I think that's the power of stories. And the other myth about also, yeah, how far he has come. The other myth is also about stories don't have to be long. They can be really short and punchy. The essential elements have to just be there. So that segues really nicely to talk about, we've been talking about stories and sharing some. So I just want to leave you with one framework today before I go into couple of more examples, which is what is an anatomy of a story? If you have to break it up into parts, what does a story have? A story will always have a time and a place. Last week, when I was walking down the road, a few years back, when I was speaking with somebody, it will have something which will give you a time and place. So anchoring your narration around it, and Durgesh, you were talking about, what do I pick and choose? So even if you can put the bare elements of what we are going to share now as a story, you will get something which is really punchy, impactful, and very neat. So you have your time and place. All stories are a sequence of events. This happened, then this happened, and then this happened. One cannot happen without the other, literally. So it's a sequence of events. And what makes the sequence of events really interesting is if there are characters. And it makes it even more interesting if the characters have conversations. And he said to me, he asked about me, he asked me questions, he said this, she said this. The first person narration makes the story really come to life when you're talking about it. Underlying all this could be anything. It could be a normal, boring narration. But what makes a story special is that aha moment, is that reveal. Something unexpected happened at the end. Something that we didn't see where it was taking. So that reveal, that unexpected angle. And again, all of this you could go and tell in a bar to a friend, and it would be okay. But in a business context, all stories have to have a point. Why are you sharing that story? Without that point, nobody at work needs to take the time out to listen to you. If it was at a bar with a friend, at a friend's house, or having tea with a friend, it's okay. You don't have to have a point. You can ramble, you can talk about it for a long time, no issues. But if you are talking at work, people want to know, why are you sharing a story? Imagine you're busy at work, you have a deadline to meet, and something's happening, and somebody comes and tells you, let me tell you a story. Nobody's going to listen to it because you're in that time pressure at the work mode. But if you tell them, I'm going to tell you something which is going to change the way you're looking at your presentation, the heads are going to go up. People are going to listen. So you need to tell the why before you share that example or what. And a lot of these examples to this, you need to add what is called the movements, which is that visual part of the story where you can imagine it happening. And only when you can take your listener to imagine it happening, will they vibe with you and will they connect with you. So those movements in the story are essential. For instance, in the Jack Ma story, it was being able to visualize that lake. That was the moment that he created for us. He said, when I was young and I went to the lake, I almost drowned. And a lot of us who've seen pictures of Jack Ma know that he's not, he's vertically challenged. So we know that it could have happened. And then the mystery of the fact that 5 years later he went and it was a dry bed. There was no water there. You can visualize it. And adding those moments to your story narration makes the story even more special. And some of the story types which really help us build trust and connect as entrepreneurs, as somebody who's pitching or talking, is things like, why do I do what I do? What has been some personal career turning points? And what did I learn from a big mistake? Or why am I like you? And a lot of these are personal stories, but they don't have to be personal stories. Even if you say that data is my oil and I'm a data person, you could talk about stories of your clients. You could talk about how your product was conceived. You could talk about why this became a pain point. And I know that Streamalive on their landing homepage has a story of why Streamalive came. That's a backstory about the product. It's not the backstory of the founder directly, but about the product. So if you say, oh, I'm a shy person, I can't share my personal story, talk about your product, talk about your clients, talk about your clients' pain points and how you work together to resolve it. And the client is now happy. Talk about success story from the client as anchor, not you as an anchor. So all of those are great ways for you to connect and build trust. I want to show, actually, as we come to the really fag end of the session, I want to show maybe one, if time permits, two examples of how it need not be our personal experiences. It could be something of others. It could be something that we read elsewhere, we heard on podcast, but how do we convert it and bring it into a conversation? So this anecdote I read in a book called Backable. It's written by Sunil Gupta, who's an author and he's a TV host, along with another professor, Carl Adler. And this is a great example of why we need to show and not tell. A lot of times when we are talking about our work and all that, we just tell about it. We talked about that, right? The list of credentials, the telling part of it. But how to move from telling to showing? And Sunil in this book talks about a time when in the office of a venture capital firm, he met this really likable startup founder who was from New York, who was pitching for his pizza delivery app. Now, as a customer, you could go and tap one button and get your favorite pizza delivered. Fine, pizza app. So what's special about it? But the founder had come from 5 generations of pizzeria owners from a small town in Italy. And as Sunil and the founder were talking to each other, he found that it was so fascinating, this person talking about his great-grandfather who opened the family's pizzeria business in a small town in Italy. And he was totally charmed by this guy. The guy had a thick Brooklyn accent. He had a genuine smile. It was a sense of ease. But when the investors came, Sunil suddenly found that the founder froze. He just pulled back his smile. He put on a very serious and solemn attitude. He started going through his slide deck, and his easy style just began to evaporate. So the slides were very well designed. The content was strong, but his delivery was flat. And sensing that the investors are not listening to him, Sunil decided to help the founder. And he said, hey, why don't you show your app on your phone? And he walked up to the founder and started peering over his shoulders to look at the app on the phone. And one by one, all the other investors followed suit. And that's when the switch flipped. With everybody huddled over him showing his app, showing the features, his energy came back. And his personality shifted to how it was when he was sharing his family story. And he got their interest. And a few weeks later, he got the investment. And I think we see this happen with a lot of founders who leave aside their story, or the story of the product discovery and focus only on the data. Reason and data are important, but they'll only lead to conclusions. And it's the emotion of the story that's going to lead to the investment, in this case, the action. Now, where can you use this example? Of course, you can use it as an example to say it's important for founders to share their stories. But you can also use it as an example to say that it's not enough if you just tell, you need to move to the show. You need to actually share an example to see how it works. Don't preach, but walk the talk and show how it happens. So sharing stories at the workplace is also a great way to move people to action and outcomes. Lux, do we have time for one more example? I know we are a little bit over time. We started a bit late, but I don't know how everyone's feeling about it. Or I can just, wrap up by giving some few tips.
I think we should be okay. I mean, if we are over time, as you said, but if you wrap in about 5 minutes, I think we should be okay. It's my suggestion.
Okay. So I will just move to some of the tips part of it. I just want to say that stories are not just about, I'll skip this for now. We tend to think of storytelling as, just the storyteller and the listener, but there's a before and there's an after. There is a whole experience of the people in the audience. It's the story itself. It's also what expectation people came with. If I came with an expectation that I will get something and I get something else. So it's also understanding people's styles of storytelling. How are they doing it? What are they saying? What are they not saying? And I think that's where this whole thing of testing and iterating and creating your story comes into play. I get asked this a lot with people who are working on their stories saying, oh, I don't know if I say it, will it fall flat? What will happen? Oh, I don't know if the audience will listen to it. Doesn't matter. Be like, and I was sharing this with Lux the other day, be like the stand-up comedians. They go, they sit with an act and they try it out on different audiences. Then they say something, then they watch, oh, the audience laughed loudly for this. Let me note it down. Oh, they didn't look, they fell flat. Okay, I'm noting it down. I'm making notes. So constantly you're testing and making notes and making those adjustments. So just like that, you can continuously test, take feedback, improve and repeat. What you're looking for is a moment of connection. And we can do that now, right now, as we are on the call, when people are there. Is there a spark of interest in their eye? Are they leaning forward to listen? Are they smiling at an anecdote or are they nodding along? What is happening? And you can, of course, take a formalized feedback later. You can do that with your story buddies. If you don't, obviously, before you do the big CEO presentation, you can test it with your team. And the whole thing is about going with that curiosity, trying it out, testing it, and seeing what connects. Okay, I shared this example. What connected with you? Ask those questions and learn from that. And whether your boss is nodding along, whether somebody is leaning forward in the chair, whether it's they could sometimes just ask you a related question. Curiosity is great. If somebody is there, and I say this about a really boring workplace has no noise. Having those questions, curiosity, a lot of stories, and noisy workplace is the workplace which is actually most engaged. If there's a low engagement workplace, there'll be no noise. And you want to create that noise. So you have to try, you have to do that reiteration. I know that we had a really short time in a way today, but I want to leave you with a few tips to remember about storytelling. Remember that in a business context, the why is really important. Why are you telling that story? What is the point that you want to make? You might want to say something, the audience might pick up something else. So be very clear and anchored on what you want to convey. How can you keep the stories real? Like in business storytelling, there's no make-believe. All the incidents that you share should have happened. You're not making it up as you go. You can do that by actually using the story structure because you're giving a time and a place and you're talking about a sequence of events. It's very easy to cross-check and find out if it actually happened. You're not bringing it out of the air. So anchoring it on to details really helps you keep the story real. Small anecdotes, adding that emotion, adding the imagery, no storytelling voice, no drama, in terms of a movie. Keep it short, because you know that imagine a CEO is in a rush, or imagine that it's a high stake conversation. You want to be able to really give it in a very crisp and concise fashion. Both Jack Ma's example, what I shared about 4 minutes, that is again a story. It's an example of what can be used to make what point. All these are short anecdotes which you can use to quickly make a point. Have a variety of stories. You don't want to be called that, oh, did she tell you that story? She always shares that story. You don't want to be a one story wonder, but you know that the audience is different every time. So you can bring on the same story if it makes a really good point. Have a basket of stories that you can dip into. I am from Chennai, which is in the south of India. We have this big project on rainwater harvesting. So stories are like that. You need to collect them when they are pouring, when they're coming out of a book, when they're in a podcast. You need to collect them. So find a way to collect those stories, other people's examples. Your own examples you'll remember, but remembering other people's examples with the details requires some practice. So find a way to capture it. I use Evernote to put in all my stories that I read from everywhere, be it from economists, on a podcast, on something else. I use it, I tag it so that I can retrieve it. And definitely with age, memory is becoming a thing. So I do need to go and refresh saying, oh, I'm going to be talking to these clients about having an innovative mindset. What are some of the examples which will help me anchor that point? So I go back and look through that and actually create a content from around that. Other than that, practice, practice, practice. The most natural storyteller is the one who has had a lot of practice. It's not the thing about Steve Jobs also said that he used to practice in front of the mirror. All of us need that practice, especially if you have to remember the details of stories of others. We won't get the details right unless we do that practice. And I say this about pottery as well. When I started doing wheel work, centering on the wheel itself was really difficult. And then once I thought, okay, I'm getting a feel of the centering, I started making the pots, but they didn't look like the store pots that I used to see in this fancy shop and all of that. But I realized handmade pottery is not going to look like this. It's going to look perfect in its own way. But for me to create what was one version of a good handmade pot, I needed to create thousands of pots. If I had sat and tried to create just that one perfect pot, I wouldn't have created anything at all. So all those thousands of pots practice is what went to create a perfect, not perfect, but a near perfect pot. And that's what we need to do with stories as well. We need to try to use it time and time again and practice it. Find a buddy, find somebody that you can try it on. I'm going for this presentation. I want to make this example. This is the point I want to make. Do you think it's going to work? Share it, test, iterate, and go with that curiosity. So with that, I just want to leave you with one thought. It's a book that I really like. It's a book called The Fussy and the Techie. It's by this person called Scott Hartley. And he says that as machines get better, and indeed they will, humans can only be better versions of themselves. Being a techie is not an antidote for anything that's coming up in this world, but being more human is. So with that, I request you and I want you to try building on your stories, be that more human at work, and go on and power on with your storytelling journey. I know this was a glimpse session, what we call the Jalak of Feel. Feel free to contact me after the session if you want to discuss more or have any other questions. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat. We did have.
So I think it's
I think it's
Streamalive
covered.
can answer the questions. I
Yeah.
think it's the last three, but I guess you covered them actually in terms of how you capture it with Evernote and how you
Right.
remember. Yes.
We did have a winning wheel as well, but I'm wondering whether, Lux and Tina, whether and Praveen, you were the ones who were like, I was seing a lot of that, and Debelina, and Durgesh, a lot of it which came. Should we try the winning wheel? And what I wanted to offer is anybody whose winning wheel is a feature, and let me try explaining it. Lux and Tina, jump in if I messed up, is where it picks up somebody, it just does a wheel thing, random, picks up somebody who's commented on the chat to win something. And today, what I thought I could offer, because it's such a short glimpse session, I thought I could offer 1 hour of free 1 hour of business storytelling coaching for anybody who comes and wins the winning wheel, if you want to take it up. So let's try that.
Let's try that. Just one condition to it.
Yeah.
If we end up with somebody who had to leave on the hour and they're not here, I'm taking it. Yeah. So if somebody's name comes up and you're not here, I'm taking it as this.
And then we'll have a discussion then.
We'll have a discussion then.
Okay.
Please.
Let me spin it. I love this. I love the game of chance in this.
It's coming up with sound very soon, so we'll have a spinning sound.
Oh, Deblina. If you're there, Deblina, I will leave my contact details. Please reach out to me. Happy to set up a time, a mutually convenient time for us to discuss more things story. Thank you for joining in today. And I will leave my contact details.
And if you, maybe if you just send this, whatever you want us to share, we can also send it with everybody. And the folks who registered but missed the session as well, we'll be sending a recording. And along with that, we'll send this to in terms of how people can stay in touch.
Sure. And I will also send there's a really nice 23 ways to do your pitching better. There's a beautiful article which has a lot of story elements built into it. I will send that to you, and maybe you can share that with because
Absolutely.
we were expecting a sort of an entrepreneurial kind of a group today. So maybe that's something that would be useful for them.
Please, if you can share that by tomorrow, we'll send it across with the recap.
I'll send it right after the call. I'll do that. So
Hey,
thank
do
you
me a favor,
all so much.
Sound, do you mind sharing your screen again?
Challenging. You're asking me to do these challenging things. Yeah, here you go.
And if you just go to the top of your slide on the top left and click on new interaction.
Okay.
You just have a custom over here and click on the emoji everywhere, which is second row, third column.
Yeah, I tried this.
Just hit a go. You don't even have to type any prompt. We're just going to give you an emoji for what we thought about the session. So this is us giving you a little bit of just thank you for an amazing session. And I think sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. So this is, you can only answer through emoji. So folks, just an emoji on what you thought of the session. A little digital giveaway for sound. And my favorite joke is the fact that if this was 2023, we would be making an NFT and selling it, and we'd all retire in a sandy beach somewhere. But times have changed.
Oh, that's this is cool. I tried this on one of my sessions, and the students really loved it. So it's a great thing to play around at the end. Thank you so much.
I think it's a lot of fun for people to channel their inner child. And thank you from everybody who attended the session, the people who are going to be watching the recording afterwards, and from two other people as well. Personally, one is Sunil Gupta and one is Jeff Bezos, because thanks to you, I just bought that book of theirs. So they thank you as well for the incremental sale that Amazon and Sunil made. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and see you all sometime. Thank you so much for participating, and thanks for setting it up, Lux, Tina.
It was fun.
Bye.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thanks, Lux.
Really appreciate this. Bye.
Thanks, folks.
Enjoyed myself. Thank
We'll catch you.
Bye.
Yeah.